Hello, I'm here in Godot 4 and I wanted to start a series on my workflow and process for creating an advanced first-person player controller. Now, by advanced, what I mean is that rather than slapping together a basic capsule shape and a camera and adding movement controls, I'm going to be showing you the process I use to create a game-ready first-person player controller. So that's going to include planning the controller, putting a lot of thought into game feel, how you want it to feel moving around and stuff, creating a 3D player model, and animating the player model. Now, to keep the scope of this video focused, for some of the topics like 3D modeling, rigging, and animating the character in Blender, I'm not going to explain step by step how to do each of these things because there are more than enough quality tutorials on YouTube for this. Instead, I'll explain how I manage each of these tasks on a project level as a solo dev. Now, please keep in mind that I am not at all an expert or professional, just a hobbyist. If I get anything wrong or if there are better ways to do anything that I'm doing, please leave a comment below and I will add it in a later video. So here in the background you can see the first person player controller I'm going to be creating. You can see right there that I've already created a basic zombie enemy with a super simple behavior tree. Includes wandering, chasing, and stumbling when being attacked. And there you can already see what our player controller can do. These cool little punch attacks. So that leads me to the first part of this process, which is planning your player controller. Obviously, you can develop a full-size game using a super simple player controller with a capsule collider, stuff like that if you wanted, but once you get past that point in development, you might find that you want to fine-tune and stylize your player controller to suit your game needs. So I especially like to start off by imagining the feel of my game, and especially thinking about which specific games you're trying to emulate the feel of when it comes to specific details like player motion, animations, attacks. For example, do you want it to feel like Doom 64 or Call of Duty, Dying Light? I'm just using those examples as first-person games. If you decide on a few, next it would be a good idea to block out each specific element that you want to implement into your controller. So for example, for my player controller, I already decided that I wanted the player body to be visible. That's a big design choice because it will determine whether you even need to make a player model with animations at all. For my game, I want the player's body to be visible. And I want the camera to rotate independently from the player's body, kind of exactly like in Minecraft. When the disparity between the camera's rotation and the body's rotation exceeds a certain threshold, the body begins rotating in tandem with the camera. And then I wanted the hands to kind of sit in front of the camera and track with the camera's rotation. I wanted the hands to be positioned kind of like in Call of Duty Black Ops when you're holding the ballistic knife. Because of the way the camera will rotate with the body, the hands will have to track with the camera going up, down, left, and right. I could easily set up an IK system to achieve this, but instead I decided to go with using a blend space and animations. I want to also include a simple attack system by just making some punch animations. It'll detect hits by enabling colliders attached to the hands when the punch animation is triggered using animation events. And lastly, because of the way the camera rotates with the body, I want the body's rotation to quickly align with the camera's rotation when a punch is triggered. This way, I'll only have to create punch animations going up, down, and directly forward for the animation blend space, and I don't have to worry about making left and right animations. This is especially because, unlike the animations I'm using for the hand tracking, I'm going to be creating separate animations for each punch with each arm. So mostly this is to remove an unnecessary element of complexity that might otherwise arise from my player controller design. It's a pretty good example as to why it's a good idea to plan out your game systems like this. So for starting out my project, the first thing I like to do is set up version control using Git. Git is a version control system, and it'll allow you to organize and keep track of changes made to an entire project over time. So if you haven't already, I highly suggest you go to the link in the description and download your operating system's latest stable version of Git. To set up version control for your project, the way I do it is first go to my project folder. For now, I'll just create a new folder called game, and then we have all our game files in here. So this would be whatever folder you save your Godot project in. Open up the git bash terminal. Next, we're going to want to initialize a Git repository. So copy the file path for your directory and then go back over to the git bash terminal and type in cd for change directory and then paste your file path in quotes. So this will make your project directory your current working directory. So now you just type git init. And what this does is turn your project directory into a repository. You should now see a hidden .git folder in your folder, and if you don't see it, just go to the View tab in your File Explorer and check Hidden Items. This .git folder contains all the information about the repository's commits, which are basically like a snapshot of your project each time you save your project as a commit. So now you have created your Git repository on your local machine, but it doesn't have any of your files in it. For that, you have to add the files by typing git add, and I'll type period. Period just marks all the files in the directory. Otherwise, you could put the specific file name or names. So then to save the changes or commit them, just type git commit -m, and then the quotes, we'll just type in our commit message. So we'll just type in initial commit. So now anytime you edit your project and want to make a commit, you just type git add period again, or whichever file names you would like. And when you select all the files like this, you'll notice that it'll only commit the files that were modified, which makes a lot of sense. It's pretty cool. The next thing that will help immensely with your entire project would be hosting this repository online on GitHub. Super easy. All you got to do is go to github.com, make an account if you haven't already, and once you had, all you got to do is just go right over to new repository, just set it up like this. So this just creates an empty repository on GitHub, and what we do is every time we commit changes to the local repository, we just simply push the changes to GitHub, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So you just copy this repository URL right here, then go back to the git bash terminal and type git remote add origin, and then just paste the URL right here. And what this is going to do is link the local repository with the one on GitHub. So then all you have to do to push the changes from the local repository to GitHub is type git push -u origin master. Then every time you do git add and then git commit, just follow it with this command to push the commit you made to GitHub. Now I just want to say, I know that there is a Git plugin for Godot, but I don't use it because I currently have lots of files for other programs like Blender, all relevant to the whole project. So in my case, rather than having a Git repository for just the Godot project, I have a repository for my entire game. If eventually I have a use for a dedicated repository for the Godot project in the future, I will talk about that in a video. So now we've planned out our player controller and set up version control for our project. Now, since I have already decided that in my game I want the player's body to be visible, that means I need a 3D model for the player, along with some animations to go with it. So in the next video, I'll go into the design process, rigging, animating, and then finally importing the model from Blender to Godot 4.